My manager stood in the director's office, smiling like she'd already won, and told him, "Don't worry, I'll find a professional production house to finish his work." She had no idea that one sentence was about to end her career and pay for my entire next year of life. If you've ever been set up to fail by someone who underestimated you, stay with me, because this story is deeply satisfying. Stick around, because by the end of it, karma doesn't just knock, it sends an invoice. My name is Ryan Mitchell. Back in 2011, I was 26 years old, broke, ambitious, and, I'll admit it, a little too trusting of people who smiled at me during job interviews. I had just landed what looked like a dream gig. A mid-sized state university in Ohio wanted to break into YouTube before content marketing was even a phrase people used at dinner parties. They needed someone to build their brand from scratch. Recruitment videos, alumni spotlights, campus culture pieces, the works. They called the position content creator. I would later learn that translated to entire production department, held together by one guy and his personal laptop. The pay was modest, about $2,400 a month, which even in 2011 wasn't exactly generous for someone doing the job of 5 people. But I was hungry to build a portfolio, and universities carry weight on a resume. So I said yes. My second day on the job, my manager, a sharp-suited, tightly wound woman named Patricia Callahan, sat across from me with a printed spreadsheet and slid it over like she was dealing me a losing hand of cards. 85 videos, she said, 3 to 10 minutes each, in 52 weeks. I remember doing the math in my head and feeling my stomach drop. That wasn't a job. That was a full production studio's annual output, and I was supposed to be the writer, director, casting agent, cameraman, composer, and editor, all at once. Their cameras couldn't even shoot reliably in 1080p. Half the computers in the office still ran software that crashed if you opened more than 2 tabs. I tried to explain, gently, that this wasn't realistic for one person. Patricia just smiled, that same closed mouth, patronizing smile I'd get to know very well over the next 5 months, and said, "Just give it your best shot. If the quality's there, I'm not going to obsess over the numbers." I believed her. That was my first mistake. For the first month, things were fine. Patricia was pleasant, even warm. She'd stop by my desk, ask how a shoot went, laugh at my jokes in meetings. I actually thought I'd lucked into a good boss. Then she found out I smoked. I didn't think much of it. I stepped outside twice a day for 10 minutes, same as half the building. But a co-worker, a kind woman named Carol, who sat 2 desks down from me, actually put her hand over her face when I mentioned it in passing. "You didn't know?" she said, lowering her voice like we were discussing something dangerous. "Patricia hates smokers, like actively tries to get them pushed out. She did it to the last guy in my department." I laughed it off. I shouldn't have. Within a week, the nitpicking started. I smelled like smoke after breaks. I was 5 minutes late. Despite logging over 4 hours of unpaid overtime nearly every single day just to keep up with an impossible workload, I was unreachable during my 15-minute lunch, as if I were required to carry a company radio while eating a sandwich. Every note was small. Every note was deliberate. She wasn't managing me anymore. She was building a file. But I kept my head down. I told myself, do the work. Do it well. Let the videos speak for themselves. And they did. The ones I managed to finish were getting more views than anything the university had ever posted before. Comments were pouring in. Prospective students were tagging friends. That should have mattered. It didn't point 5 months in. I got called into the director's office. Patricia was already sitting there when I walked in, wearing an expression I can only describe as professionally disappointed, personally thrilled. My stomach knew before my brain did. Something was wrong. The director, a heavy-set man named Gregory Whitfield, folded his hands on the desk and told me he was concerned. Halfway through the year, and I'd only completed 30 of the 85 videos. I tried to defend myself. I told him I was working 60-hour weeks, doing every job on what should have been a 5-person crew, all by myself, with equipment that could barely function. I reminded him that the videos I had produced were outperforming everything else on their channel by a wide margin. I reminded him, pointedly, that Patricia herself had told me quality mattered more than quantity. Gregory wasn't interested. The KPI was the KPI, he said. Numbers were numbers. And since we were behind schedule, it was, in his words, prudent to cut the cord early. I asked, genuinely curious, how exactly they planned to hit 85 videos a year with no content creator at all. That's when Patricia let out this short, satisfied laugh and said, "We'll find a professional production house to finish his work." Gregory gave her a strange look, like even he wasn't sure where that plan had come from, but he nodded anyway. Then he turned to me, almost gently, and said, "Don't worry, Ryan. Manager will get it handled." I sat there, jaw tight, humiliated, trying to hold my composure, while these two people talked about replacing me like I was a broken printer that just needed a warranty claim. But somewhere underneath the anger, a very specific, very quiet thought clicked into place. She has no idea who she's about to call. Here's the thing Patricia didn't know. As the only content professional in that office, I was also the one who maintained our production contact database, the list of external video production houses we'd call if we ever needed backup for a big shoot. Patricia had never worked in production. She had no contacts, no relationships, no idea who was good, who was reliable, who would actually deliver. She had a job title and an ego. That was it, which meant that if the university was going to hire an outside production house to finish my work, they were going to pull from my list. So before I even cleared out my desk, I went into that database and quietly scrambled every phone number and email address on it. Wrong digits, typo domains, dead leads, every single one except one. I left a single entry untouched. A production house where my friend Marcus Bell worked as a junior director. Not an assistant. A real director, just early in his career, hungry for a break. I called Marcus that night and laid it all out for him. In a couple of days, I told him, "You're going to get a call to pitch for a huge project. I'm going to tell you exactly what they want to hear, exactly what themes they love, exactly how to package it so it looks like you read their minds. And when you win it, because you will, your company pays me a 15% finder's fee." Marcus didn't hesitate for a second. He put me on a call with his general manager that same night. When the GM realized this was potentially 6 months of steady, high-paying university work, he had a contract drafted before I even hung up the phone. 2 days later, exactly as I predicted, Patricia's office called Marcus's production house to pitch. I had given Marcus the playbook, the themes the university loved, the tone Gregory responded to in meetings, the pacing Patricia always praised without realizing she was describing my own work back to me. So when Marcus and his team walked in, it looked less like a pitch and more like a mind-reading act. Patricia and Gregory were floored. They signed on the spot, practically giddy that they'd found a team who just got it. Now, here's what neither of them understood about hiring a full production house. It isn't cheap. You're not paying one overworked guy with his own laptop anymore. You're paying a producer, a director of photography, a gaffer, a sound engineer, an editor, an assistant director, and production assistants for every single video, on every single shoot day. Each video Marcus's team produced cost 2 to 3 times what my entire monthly salary had been. But they were fast, professional, efficient. They knocked out 50 videos in about 4 months flat. 50 videos, full crew, premium rates. That professional production house ended up costing the university over 100 months worth of my old salary for a chunk of work that used to be part of my single annual paycheck. And I sat back, half a world away, collecting my 15%, about 15 months of salary, deposited quietly while I let the whole thing play out exactly the way I knew it would. I genuinely thought that was the end of it. I'd gotten paid, got my dignity back, and started planning to enroll in a respected film program overseas with the extra cushion. Then, while I was actually on vacation in Bali, my phone rang. It was Carol, the co-worker who'd warned me about Patricia on my very first week. She was almost breathless. "Ryan," she said, "Patricia got fired, and Gregory got absolutely torn apart by the chancellor." Turns out the university had only ever budgeted about 1.5 years of my old salary for the entire content project. Patricia, desperate to prove she could get it handled after firing me, had approved payment after payment to Marcus's production house without ever getting proper sign-off from Gregory. By the time anyone above her actually looked at the numbers, they'd blown through the budget by more than 10 times. 10 times over budget. Approved, line by line, signature by signature, by the same woman who fired me for being behind schedule. She wasn't just let go. She was walked out that same week, in front of the same office where she'd once smiled about finding a professional to replace me. I like to imagine that meeting with the chancellor, Patricia, sitting across the desk, trying to explain how a project budgeted at 1.5 years of my salary had somehow ballooned into over 10 times that amount, all because she couldn't stand the idea of a guy who smoked on his 15-minute breaks outperforming her expectations. I wasn't in that room. I didn't need to be. A phone call on a beach in Bali was all the closure I needed. Knowing the woman who tried to erase my work with a professional replacement had just been erased herself by her own decision that I didn't sabotage anyone. I didn't lie, cheat, or break a single rule. I simply stepped back and let two people who underestimated me make their own decisions, using the exact resources I had built for them in the first place. Sometimes the most satisfying justice isn't the kind you force. It's the kind you just get out of the way for and let happen on its own. If this story gave you that little jolt of satisfaction, let me know in the comments what the most satisfying I let them do it to themselves moment you've ever witnessed was. And if you want more stories like this one, stick around, because karma's got a lot more receipts where this came from.